when you give a speech, you know, and then you can sense that the audience is like upset or they're very happy. In the same way, you feel from the audience like who they are, and that shapes the music itself.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Any questions?
So how do you add your own characters, your own personality into that?
Yeah, I think that's almost unavoidable. It's like when you talk with somebody. If you sense who they are and what they want to talk about, and you make that your own desire itself, like, and you want to talk about what they want to discuss, and they want to talk about what you want to discuss. It becomes this kind of cyclical conversation almost in music in the same way.
Adding their emotions with your emotions.
Yeah, it's the same.
Fine.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's interesting because now with the different audiences and environments that we have, it will be interesting to see every night, because in a night you perform 2 times, 3 times,
Yeah.
to see how you react to the audience,
Right.
because the environments are totally different.
Yeah.
So that's what would be our task, I guess, to see now. Now talking about specifically what he played now, because we are directly involved as an audience, we're here, so somehow we affected him. And if you have any question about what he played now, if satisfied you, if you want to say something, if you were left untouched, or you had something to say about that.
Yeah. What exactly, whenever you began,
Yeah.
what did you immediately start to feel?
Yeah, at the beginning, there's not as much of a connection. That's the
Right.
point. It sort of gradually,
Right.
people begin to understand you, I think. And,
Right, because
yeah.
you did change. You had some good transition from the beginning, throughout.
When there's also this kind of short time frame we're dealing
Yes.
with too, so there's also that issue. But yeah, at the beginning, there's often like a sort of like a psychological wall between the audience and the performer. And that, I mean, you can try to break it down, but often it just you have to wait until like everybody's ready to engage, I think.
And what about nowadays that the audience doesn't have a patience to wait? Do you ever consider that part of your strategy when you?
Yeah, I mean, if the audience, yeah, it's probably the case. They're
You know,
much less
someone-
patient than they are. But that lack of patience, I think it has to come from an overstimulation in their life, because overstimulation basically causes lack of patience.
Exactly.
And if you have that kind of problem, then I'm not really sure it can be overcome. However, I think if you can create a feeling of calmness, I think that removes the need for stimulation. And then once that need is gone, then people can sort of enter your world, I think,
Yeah,
and enter theirs.
that's a great concept. Now, how old are you?
33.
How do you make your money? Who invites you? Who has this availability to listen to you, to inspire you, who is open to your music and who is willing to pay for that?
Well, for the past 4 years,
Where do you live? Where?
Yeah, for the past 4 years, I've done tours in like France and in England and in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
But I have them arrange, have agents arrange concerts for that. How?
And the advertising is based on how do you engage the audience to come from home to listen to you?
Yeah, that's the hard part. It's obviously it's agents and their connections, and getting
What type of venues?
various. I do the last one I played was in Tokyo in Dennen Shofufutabagaku, and it's like a school,
Mm-hmm.
and they invite former alumni. So often the audience is built into certain advertising programs. And then I played for lots of companies now, for shareholder meetings, they invite me for those kind of things. So it's more private events nowadays. But there are many possibilities, yeah.
When you play for a company event,
Yeah.
are they seated and listening to you, or is it more ambient music?
No, they're seated listening, because often they want to engage their employees in more creative thinking,
Yes.
because they get very stuck in one way of thinking. So the improvisation really kind of supposedly frees their mind in that respect.
It tends to be that more on improv stuff like this, there are a lot more happenings with improv, especially for creativity workshops in businesses and stuff. This is becoming a lot more popular, especially in the States. I've had several that have actually come to the university that have actually started to do these things. So it's a good thing. It's very interesting, and it does involve whoever's listening to you, the audience, and you quite, it's a beautiful feeling because you do read the audience quite well when it comes to this stuff. So.
Yeah, I think I'm beginning to realize now that the uses it has are far more varied than I realize. I recently been talking right now to a Japan House in Los Angeles, and I'm comparing like Shintoism, the traditional Japanese religion, to improvisation, and like how they both share this like constant creation kind of feeling. And this, so there's almost unlimited connections with life you can make from improvisation and the forming of a structure, all these kind of things.
How long are your concerts typically?
Typically 1 hour, yeah, typically.
And the 1 hour, how many pieces?
Well,
Or
yeah, I was gonna ask. And do you have conversations between with your audience, or?
Yeah, I talk more and more these days. Yeah. Because I find that people often don't, at first, even if you like literally say, I'm going to make up every note on the spot, that doesn't quite, they don't quite get it yet. So often you have to like really kind of repeat things in different ways and like tell stories.
So repeating things.
Yeah.
You find yourself repeating a lot of,
to communicate, yes,
Right.
to, yeah.
Yeah, I try to tell different stories every time because it
Right.
begins to feel a little bit hypocritical if I give speeches before an improvisation concert.
yes.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I tell one like how, like I saw a guy in the parking lot drop like eggs like when he went shopping and like he got so upset, like, kicked it, and went into his car, and then a crow came by and ate the eggs, So improvisation is really how do you make use of the unexpected and things that seem wrong, for example, when actually you can just use it in the same way.
Now, for example, a piece like that,
Yeah.
the eggs, the kick, the bird,
Yeah,
would you be able to play for us?
I do give an example of that.
Can you, I mean, it becomes part, history of your repertoire. So that piece you did that day, would you be able to share with us today? If I were to ask you that piece.
It's almost like a dream. I forget what I've done after it's over.
Okay.
I do give an example though, like when I say if I want to play this, and I actually play a wrong note, for example, on the top. But then if I change it to, it's not really wrong anymore. It's like only what is not accepted and what is not used is only true wrongness, like in life or in improvisation.
Anything since you arrived here, when did you land here?
Yesterday, last night.
Last night.
Yeah.
So anything that affected you today around the environment here, from breakfast to?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the most. Actually, this is my first time to Italy, so it's one of the
Oh, okay.
one of the most open. The people are the most open I've ever met. I mean, anywhere I've been. So I mean, you don't feel the tension in day-to-day life that really does manifest itself in performance, I think. So yeah.
Okay, we are curious to hear this now. This is something we're going to look forward. Now, analyzing what you just did,
Yeah.
if we had an audience of young kids, let's say musicians around 12 years old,
Yeah.
and you were to explain to them what you just played,
Right.
how would, and they are musicians, so they would like to hear something about, are you using seventh, are you using your harmonic language path, where you are going? Would you think, what would you say to an audience of 12, 13-year kids that want to get to that direction, compose in your style, with your freedom, what would you tell them with this piece specifically? So think of us as, there's lots of young ladies here, they look like 13 years old. Let's look. Doesn't work for us, but for the ladies, yes. So let's see if try to think of that.
Okay.
I'm saying that because when we tour, we have a lot of these kids that we meet also, and they will be very enthusiastic about your approach.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing is to have no hesitation. It's just try to make up something that sounds like something you like. That's the first step, is to not really be constrained by theoretical guidelines. The theoretical guidelines need to be implemented at some point, but they've got to come after. The creative impulse needs to be there, and you can't have fear. That's the first thing. And I think just trying to imitate something is the best first step for this. I mean, so if you like Mozart, improvise something that sounds like Mozart. And then once you learn counterpoint rules and all those things, then you start putting them in there. That's the best way to start.
The class. Yeah.
Yeah.